Hello everyone. How are you all? I'm sure you're doing great. I am Sian Shubudia and I am your ATX Advanced Tax Trainer, your mentor and your guide. Before we begin with this topic, I would just like to discuss upon that advanced tax is one step ahead of the basic taxes that we covered in UK taxes at F6 level. But I do understand that most of you joining at this point are coming with 9 paper exemptions. So the basic knowledge of F6 taxes that was there at the applied skills level is not completely covered by all of you. And this being UK tax is not something that you have regularly studied as a part of your other courses curriculum. So when we discuss advanced taxes here, I would cover the basic portions also wherever it is relevant. So you really don't have to go back to those topics through various books or various sources in order to make yourself accustomed with it. So don't worry, be rest assured that wherever it is relevant for me to cover those basics, I would be covering them, giving you notes, everything with relation to those topics. Okay? So now we begin with chapter 1. Chapter 1 of your advanced taxes is the chapter that typically talks about the ethical responsibilities of you being an ACCA tax professional. See, now this chapter tells you that your duties as an ACCA tax professional goes just beyond normal calculation of taxes on giving the tax advice to the clients or planning the taxes for them. It goes beyond it. It basically takes you towards ensuring that as a tax professional you are bound by the ACCA code of ethics. So how and what you should be ensuring while you're carrying on your task as an ACCA tax professional is what we're going to cover in this chapter. So this chapter is about ethics and tax avoidance schemes, more focused on ethics because this is a very important chapter as it is coming in the exams regularly over various terms, and a small extract question of around 5 marks can be asked from this chapter. So as a part of a larger question of section A of 50 marks, you can definitely expect this to be asked for around 5 marks. So of course, we should be absolutely ready to even get that 5 on 5 in the exam. So now to begin with, first let's understand what are these code of ethics, or what are these principles of code of ethics that an ACCA tax professional is bound by. It means that, for example, you are a financial controller of a company and you are an ACCA qualified professional. So even though you are acting as an employee for the company, but then also you are bound by these code of ethics to ensure that these 5 principles which I am going to discuss, these 5 principles, you are governed by those 5 principles. Your actions would be that would be considered as a result of following these 5 principles. So it's like it's a mandate thing that when you are ACCA, you are bound by this code of ethics. So these 5 principles you're bound to follow. And if you don't follow, if there is any breach, then actions will be taken against you. So it is so critical and so important of you being an ACCA that you are bound by this code of ethics to be followed compulsorily and mandatorily. So which are these 5 ethics? Okay, the 5 principles that we are going to discuss here, and I've given you text here. Okay, because this is going to help you in writing your answers and framing your answers in the exam. So you need some material, right? These are those materials. Of course, we're going to take these all in detail, okay, and understand all the steps and the purposes. And also, I would make you understand that what kind of scenarios will be asked with relation to these ethics, these principles, so that when you find these breaches in the exam, you can instantly relate to which principle is being breached. Okay, let's continue now. First principle is principle of integrity. Second principle is principle of objectivity. Third principle is principle of professional competence and due care. Fourth principle is principle of confidentiality. Fifth principle is principle of professional behavior. That means these five principles are the by default principles that you have to follow mandatorily, and you really cannot afford to ensure that you are, breaching them. So let's understand these principles with examples one by one. First is the principle of integrity. It basically means what? That let's say you are given a case study and therein it is being said that you are a financial controller or a CFO or a finance manager of an entity and you are ACCA qualified. Okay, so that means you are an ACCA professional, you're bound by these ethics. And then the question says that you are instructing the accountant to do a window dressing of the profits. That means inflate the profits a bit, because more the profits are, more is the bonus that you are going to get. So do you think that is a principal breach of integrity? Integrity means to be honest, to be honest in the conduct of duties that you are doing, to be straightforward in the duties that you are conducting, okay, that you are performing. So you have to be straightforward and honest. In my example, was the finance director honest? No. His intention was that he will get the profits manipulated, artificially increased, so that more is the profits, more will be the targets achieved, and more will be the bonus that he will get. This shows that he breached the principle of integrity because he was being dishonest in his approach. So this is your principle number one to be followed, that is principle of integrity. Clear? Crystal clear? Let's go to the next one. The next one is principle of objectivity. What is principle of objectivity? Objective means what? That you are being objective in your approach. That means you are absolutely clear in your approach and there is no conflict of interest, no biasness, whatever is involved here, and you are being absolutely crystal clear in your approach. Let's take an example. Let's say that you are a finance director of a company, the case study says, and you are entering into a contract, a material contract with a close friend of yours. Do you think it is appropriate if you are a party to decide the terms and conditions of the contract? No, right? Why? Because you know the other supplier. So there is always a chance that you can enter into a transaction which is not benefitable for the entity, and you may just enter into any kind of a malified activity with that friend of yours. So there is definitely a clear risk that there is going to be biasness, there is going to be conflict of interest, and also one more example I would like to give you where there's a breach of principle of objectivity. Like in the previous example, I said that being a finance director, you are instructing the accountant that you got to artificially increase the profit, otherwise your position may be in danger. So what you are doing? You are undue putting pressure on him. That is influencing the decisions. So what is this? Breach of principle of objectivity, where you are not being clear in your approach. It's full of biasness, it's full of conflict of interest, it's full of the influence that you are doing. You are influencing the decisions, you are manipulating those decisions. So that means there is a breach of principle of objectivity. Clear? I hope now you're clear in what circumstances you can have a breach of principle of objectivity, right? Make a note of it. And don't worry, once we finish up with this chapter, I'll take up questions also that has been asked as, questions in the past. So those extracts we will take. Now, third, breach of professional competence and due care. Important note here, competence. Competence means you should be professionally, you should have that skill set to do the work. For example, there is a team of yours, okay? There is an engagement team of yours that is carrying on the relevant audit work for a client. But none of the members who are carrying on the audit work are professionally qualified. They may be just carrying the normal graduation degrees, or maybe just carrying the other diplomas and all, but they're not professionally qualified to carry on the task. So now, are they having their required competencies and skills? No. So there is a breach of principle of competency and that is professional competency and due care. One more example, I mean, that has been asked as a past paper question also, that let's say you are an ACCA qualified professional, you're qualified around 20 years back, and since then you have never been in touch with what are the updates. And today, when you're implementing certain transactions, or you are calculating the taxable income for the taxpayer, or let's say you are looking into the application of IFRS, but you have not kept yourself updated with the current trends and what is the current updates as regards those IFRS, or as regards those tax changes. In any of the examples it can be used, then you are not professionally competent. Even though you carry the degree, but you have kept yourself kind of a dormant. You have not updated yourself. So when you are not in updation with the current trends, what are the current taxes, what is the current IFRS, then it is as good as you have kept yourself incompetent. So you are incompetent to carry on that task. Okay. So that means even if you are not in line with what is the current trends, as per the applicable standards, and you are not able to apply the due diligence, then you are not professionally competent, and this is the breach of professional competency and due care. That means even though you complete your ACCA degree, your efforts don't end here. You have to make yourself updated regularly, like we keep ourselves updated with what are the trends in the Instagram. You need to keep yourselves updated with these tax trends also. So for example, if I'm being a CA or a USCMA, or even when I'm doing ACCA also, I need to keep myself updated. It's my professional duty. And if you're not keeping yourself updated, then you're breaching this professional principle. I mean, it's a very basic duty that you are breaching. So this is a breach of professional competence and due care. Clear? Let's go to the next one. Confidentiality, boss. This is one of the most important areas. Let me give you this input. Confidentiality means what? Then let's say I'm working, I worked with Deloitte, and I used to do audits for a lot of listed companies. Let's say I was an auditor for the ITC company. Now, I am bound by that principle of confidentiality. That means I cannot reveal any information about that client to anybody. To anybody. Okay? So, in relation to it, we have the insider trading also, because when you're bound by the principle of confidentiality and you reveal that information of, let's say, stock price movements or any new updates that is going to take place, then we have this insider trading clause also coming up, right? So, this is all related with the principle of confidentiality. Let me tell you one more important thing. Let's say you leave that client, you have resigned from that client, you're no longer acting for the client. Now what if you give that information to somebody else? Will you be still covered by principle of confidentiality? Yes, even when you cease to act for the client. So up to 5 years after cessation, it's all there in the book, don't worry. Okay, these are the summary notes that you would be also getting after the class. These are the class notes. Okay, and book has all the content, so don't worry, I'm writing the pointers here. You can just listen to me and grab those points. Okay, now up to 5 years after cessation, you still are bound by the principle of confidentiality. That means you cannot reveal it to any third party, any other client, or any other person, any information relating to this client. In fact, you need to also keep a record of all the all the work that you have done up to 5 years after cessation as well. So that also you have to maintain, that also you cannot skip. Clear? Now few more pointers I would like to add on. See, what if, can there be a circumstance when, even though I'm bound by the principle of confidentiality, but the law, or there are some pointers in law that will allow me to share the information? Can it happen? Yes. What if you have a raid by income tax, there is a raid by ED, there is a raid by any other government agencies, and which requires the disclosure, then you are bound to disclose. Second, what if there is any clause by law, that says that, or professionally you may be required to disclose. Like for example, I think the most common example I can give you is when quality and test audit. These quality reviews, quality control audits, they take place. So then anything which is relating to that product quality, you need to disclose, right? So these are the examples where disclosure then becomes mandatory. But otherwise than that, you are bound by the principle of confidentiality always, always as an ACCA professional till 5 years, even after the end of cessation of the task. Now, even like I was saying it, just let me continue this part only, that when you become an ex-accountant, then also you're bound by the principle of confidentiality, correct? Now, what if Mr. A is a ex-accountant and I approach Mr. A and say that, look, I have been given the current appointment or current assignment by the client, and I came to know that you were the ex-accountant. Fine. Now, can you please tell me any information that relate to the client that you think I should be aware of, or what was the reason why you resigned? Okay, or any other information that I may ask to the client or to that ex-accountant. And of course, there can be two situations. Either the ex-accountant will give me that information, but then, like I said, he's bound by the principle of confidentiality. So he will only give me that information if the client permits him. Second case, this client said, no, you cannot share that information. Then will he share? No, because he's still bound by the principle of confidentiality, right? He will not share. But I, being the prospective accountant, I will think, okay, there is something fishy. Why he's not sharing? And then I would say, as per the ACCA Code of Ethics, I would not accept that appointment. I would refuse to work for that client because there is things that have not been shared, which ideally should have been shared, and client should have given permission. Okay, so then in that case, you would refuse to work for that client. So this is what your principle of confidentiality tells you, that there are situations when you need to disclose information. If that is not disclosed, then you are bound to refuse that assignment and don't go ahead with it. Okay, because this is also your duty as per the ACCA Code of Ethics. Clear? Clear till this point? So we have done with the principle of integrity. Remember the terms honesty and straightforwardness. We are done with the principle of objectivity. Remember the terms biasness, conflict of interest, undue influence, undue pressurizing and all. We are done with the principle of confidentiality. Remember that pointers that you cannot share the information with anyone except when it is allowed by the client or allowed by the law, so on. Otherwise, you will refuse to act for the client. Simple. Next is professional behavior. Professional behavior doesn't only talk about that you should have the etiquettes to deal with the client, you should have the basic manners, how you should be acting in the basic professional capacity, but it also talks about that leave aside the Income Tax Act, talk about IFRS, talk about the labor laws, talk about the Environment Protection Act, talk about any other act. You have to ensure that you're complying with these laws and regulations. Okay, and then it shows your professional behavior, because you are not just looking into income tax, but all the applicable laws and regulations have been followed, have been applied with, complied with, and this is what professional behavior talks about. It also talks about that you should not bring disgrace to the profession, so you should act in a way that is not bringing any disgrace to the profession. For example, we had various scandals, right? Being the Enron scandal, be it the Satyam scandal, and the various scandals, the Toshiba scandal that took place in the past. In all these cases, the professional accountants were involved. So, some way or the other, they brought some disgrace to the profession. That means they did not act in the best of the professional behavior that they should have acted. Correct. So, professional behavior talks about this, that it is not just that you have to comply with the laws and regulations, but you have to ensure that you are actually representing the entire profession. So you being ACCA represents the entire ACCA. You should not do anything that brings disgrace to this profession, to this elite profession. You should not do anything that shows that, it's bringing discredit to this profession. Simple. Okay, and so in a way, you're carrying on your shoulders a responsibility that when you are dealing with the public, you're acting in the public interest in all the professional and business relationships. Okay, in every dealing that you do, in every interaction that you do with the public, you're dealing in a way that it is bringing, kind of a pride to this profession and not disgrace. So, this is professional behavior. In many of the questions, you will find that clause that it would say that intentionally laws were breached. That means professional behavior was not there. Or it would talk about that the tax accountant was found to be bribing the client, or he was receiving bribe from the client. Now that is not something which is a good professional behavior, right? So this is going to bring discredit to the profession, and hence it is a breach of professional behavior. Don't mix competency and behavior. Competency is relating to skill set. Behavior is relating to a day-to-day behavior, right? Your everyday actions that is going to bring either pride or discredit to the profession, complying with the laws and regulations. So we have discussed about 5 principles. Let's do a recap quick. Integrity relating to honesty and straightforwardness. Objectivity relating to very good, relating to conflict of interest, biasness, and yes, undue influence and all. Number 3 is your confidentiality relating to your, keeping the information secret until you're allowed to share it. Number 4, professional competence and due care, that is relating to skill set. Number 5, professional behavior, that is relating to your complying with the laws and regulations and to ensure that you don't disgrace the profession. Simple. Summary, clear, absolutely. These are the 5 fundamental principles as per the ACCA Code of Ethics that every professional is bound and mandatory to follow. Okay, now these are some pointers that I'm going to discuss more. After that, we'll go to the book and we'll discuss more portions and then do questions. But these additional notes I've intentionally given you here in this summary because this will help you when you're writing answers in the exam. You need content, right? So again, these content I've given you so that it helps you when you're writing the exam and you will get these portions to write. Okay. Now, this point says that if, let's say there is a conflict of interest, and of course it's a threat, right? It's a breach of the principle of objectivity. I agree with it. But what if, what is the appropriate course of action that we should try to mitigate this risk, right? Mitigate this threat and reduce it or eliminate it only. But what if the management through its actions are not able to eliminate the risk? There is still some risk remaining. They are not able to mitigate the risk or reduce it. Then what should be the correct action? Tell me. Let's say we are not able to do anything, conflict of interest is still remaining. Then as a tax professional, what is your by default duty? Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. That you will refrain to act for the client. You will say, bye bye, Tata. We are resigning from this job. I'm no longer going to continue to act for you. Because if I'm not able to reduce the risk, if I'm not able to mitigate the risk, then as per the code of ethics, I cannot work for the client. Then you would give resignation from one or more conflicting engagements. Okay, which is more conflicting, you will resign from that. The next pointer we have already discussed that the existing as well as the ex-accountants or professionals are bound by the principle of confidentiality. They cannot just say to the new accountants, look, I'll give you all the data and everything that you need for, even if that is your best friend. You cannot do that. Okay. So you cannot share that information because then it will be like the ex-accountants have breached the principle of confidentiality and it's a criminal offense. So apart from the action that will be taken by ACC and probably the accountant will be removed from the register of members, okay, but still criminal charges will also be levied on the person. So now if the ex-accountant says, boss, we cannot share that information, then what is the duty of this prospective accountant? The prospective accountants will not accept the appointment. Clear? Good. Let's go forward. Now it says that will it still be a breach? Well, let's say that I have worked for an insurance client, okay, and now I'm no longer working for the client, but I've got another client who's also into insurance business. Okay. No, I am not revealing any confidential information of the client, but the experience that I gained, the information that I obtained, I'm using it, in that insurance, other insurance parties' work. Can I do that? Yes, that's what we do, right? Like I worked in Deloitte, I understood how to carry on the audits, for the listed companies and many other companies. And then when I moved into my own practice and I had my own clients, I definitely used the experience that I had derived from my experience with Deloitte, right? But never I used the data of any client, never I used any of the audit papers of those clients because I was bound by the principle of confidentiality. Clear? So this is what I can say, that we can use the experience which is gained from advising earlier clients to be used while you're assisting the prospective clients. So this is not going to breach the principle of confidentiality. Clear? Now let's take more portions here. Now few portions that I will take from the book, the portions that I have not covered. Yeah, one pointer I would cover here, which is conflict of interest. Now, what is conflict of interest? Let me give an example. Like I gave you the example of friend, right? When you're entering into material transaction, you're entering it with a friend. But I'll give you one of the best examples also. Let's say you are a lawyer, okay, and you are handling a divorce case, and you're representing both husband and wife. So it is conflicting, right? Very much conflicting, right? So then ideally what you should do? You should inform. It's not that directly you will leave working for one of them. Let there be comfort level for both husband and wife. You should inform to these relevant parties that look, you are working for both of them. Okay, and then you should wait for their consent. If they give you consent in writing that okay, we are okay even if you work for my husband, and being a wife I'm okay, or husband is okay that you're working for both of them, then it's not a problem. You can go ahead with this assignment. It's not a problem. But if they are having problems, which 99% cases they will have, so if they don't give you that consent and there are issues, then what would be the correct action? That you please stop working in these conflicting cases, and you then just represent one of the clients, or maybe just refuse to act for both of them. But then you will no longer act for both of them. You may just act at max for one of them or none of them, right? And then this information should be made should be disclosed to HMRC as well. Now comes the next point. Then what are the safeguards that ideally should be in place? These are the hot favorite topic in your exam. That what are the safeguards that should be in place when, let's say, you are having any conflicts. Okay, that can be in place when you are not having conflict, but you may have conflicts. For example, I'll give you one of my practical examples. When I was working with Deloitte, we had multiple teams like start audit team, internal audit team, tax team, accounting team, any other outsourced activity, payroll team, and so on. So it used to be that if I am doing an audit assignment for, let's say, ITC, there was another team of mine that was looking into its other, any other consultancy matter or any other tax audit matter also. Okay, though it is not allowed that a company should carry out the two tasks, tax audit and stat audit for the same company. But let's say I can take another example that let's say my engagement partner was into stat audit, and there was another engagement partner that maybe was looking into inequality audits. Okay, so we ensured the safeguards that both the teams were separate, no exchange of information was being done in between them, and we were both bound by the principle of confidentiality, and we did not share information. So the use of separate engagement teams can be a safeguard here. Then preventing the access rights, that let's say when I'm logging onto the system with my user ID, I can only access a particular data, and with the other team's user ID, they can only access their data. So we cannot share each other's data at all, and there is firewalls, and all those controls are in place. Then third can also be like I can give you the example. When we used to do audits for these clients, we always used to fill a form that we are bound by the principle of confidentiality, and I will not share this information even with my family members, my brother, sister, parents as well. And I used to sign that form. So that form will give you clear cut instructions, and that is like a clear cut proof that no person of this engagement team will share data with anybody. So we have signed this confidentiality agreement, right? And then the actions of the team people, the team, the actions of the team, and in fact the regular activities were generally being monitored by a special team. So, and they never used to reveal to us, but we knew that we were always under surveillance for that confidentiality aspect, right? So it is a fact, because confidentiality has to be maintained, and there has to be somebody who's supervising it. So this is what the safeguard measures are in place, and practically we use it. So what can be the safeguard measures that you can suggest in the exam? Like number one, we discussed that proper access passwords and all should be there. Clear cut team bifurcation should be there. No exchange of information should be there between them. Okay, no common work should be shared between them, right? And absolutely no connection should be there. Confidentiality agreement should be signed. Other forms can be signed by the entity to ensure that the data is not shared, and the data is not, in fact, shared with anybody, right? So all these pointers you can write in the exam to ensure that the safeguards are in place. Okay, we will look at the activity. And before that, I will just discuss one more point, which is a hot favorite pointer in your exam. Hot favorite pointer is what is generally the steps or the pointers that in tax accountant ACCA should keep in mind when you are approaching a prospective client, or maybe you are getting work from a prospective client. What are the safeguards? You can say what are the precautionary measures that should be in place always as a mandatory step. Number one, whether it's a corporate client or an individual client, mandatory the identification proofs should be obtained. Like for example, the identity proof for an individual has to be there, or any other documents that may have been issued by HMRC. For example, the income tax returns, their pay numbers and their identification numbers, so they have to be verified. I mean, it's like a preventive measure that you are taking, a precautionary measure that you are taking to ensure that prima facie the client looks genuine. For corporate clients, we can have the certificate of incorporation, the details of the directors, shareholders, and all. Then the returns filed by them till date, the returns filed with the registrar of companies, and so on. See, ultimately, we have to ensure that the entities are genuine, be it individual or be it corporations. Right? This is the duty of the tax professional. So that basically you are eliminating step one, which is prima facie they don't look genuine, or there is some irregularity that appears to you genuinely, as first step. So that is what you are removing, so that private facie they look good, genuine clients, and then it's like a green light for you to go ahead. So this is a preventive measure that has to be adopted. Now you have to ensure that when you are accepting the client, okay, it would not create any threat to the compliance with the fundamental principles. For example, it should not seem as a by default point that there is a threat to the principle of integrity or professional behavior. How would you be able to find it? When you have got records of them that earlier they have been a part of tax evading activities. So that means these transactions may appear to be malified, or they appear to be malicious, or they appear to be that they're not genuine, they're not bona fide transactions. So then you may just refuse to work for that client, right? And there's a breach of then principle of integrity and professional behavior. Another point can be like What if your engagement team only is not very well qualified? Like we gave the example, their skill sets are not proper, so then there is a breach of principle of professional competence in the UK. So not just from the client perspective but from the team perspective also we have to see. So if any of these factors go by, then typically it should mean that we should refrain from acting to the client for the client, and we should decline to enter into this relationship. Clear? Let's do one more point. So far what we covered in detail about the ethics, about the breaches, we covered about what are the precautionary measures to be taken, the preventive measures to be taken to ensure that, these do not take place, these breaches do not take place with the prospective clients. Then we also discussed about the safeguards that should be in place, the conflict of interest that can be there. Correct? So we discussed about these pointers, and I think all these pointers are very general points. It's not something that you really have to think for. They are the general point, the obvious points that come. Now I'll take up the next point, which is tax evasion and tax planning. See, what is tax evasion and what is tax planning? Let's have an understanding of the same. See, when I say it's a tax evasion or when I say it's a tax planning, it simply means, let's take an example, that let's say a client approaches me and says, ma'am, I want to minimize the taxes. And I suggest to the client, okay, fine, you want to minimize, don't show your trading profits, eliminate it. I mean, who is going to look at your profits? So just eliminate it. Or second suggestion I give him is, okay, you want to minimize the profits, let me see the rules and regulations and let me apply what best I can do as per the rules so that we can minimize the tax. For example, I can suggest him that why don't you invest in the pension schemes that would help you to minimize the tax. So case one was where I tried to reduce the tax illegally, right, by hiding information. Case 2 was where I tried to reduce tax but by using the legal route, that is by planning my taxes. So case A is tax evasion, which is illegal. Case B is tax avoidance through tax planning, which is legal. Okay, now the question comes in, now what if it is tax evasion? How would it affect? If it is a tax evasion, then it's your responsibility as an ACCA to ensure that the ethics are followed. Okay, also to ensure that some steps are followed in the sequence so that these activities are discouraged. Like step 1, let's say you come to know that your client has evaded tax. For example, you come to know that there was trading profits that should be shown as 1 lakh, but the client is actually showing 70,000 because 30,000 invoice they have intentionally hidden and they don't want to show it. When you become aware of it, ideally what you should do, you will say, ma'am, I don't think that you would say that, ma'am, we will also become a party of it. No, no, no. Okay. Ideally, what you should do as an ACC profession, yes, you would tell him that, look, this is not the correct way. Please don't do it this way. You don't hide information, show full information to HMRC. But you cannot force him, right? You can only try to convince him or persuade him. But let's say the client says, I am not going to take it back. I am going to show it, I'm not going to, show my full income and I will still continue to show my reduced income only and I'll hide this income. Then ideally what you should do, like we always suggest, stop working for that client. You will stop to work for that client. You will cease to work for that client. You will inform HMRC. What you will inform HMRC about? You will inform HMRC about that, look, I am not going to work for this client. Hold a bit. Question comes back, what is HMRC that you have been discussing? See, like we have income tax department in our country. In UK, the tax department of the country is income tax department only. But since in UK we have the monarchy system, right, where we have king, queen, and all. So the departments are also named generally after the queen only, because queen has been the longest monarchy in the history of UK. This monarchy system. So HMRC is also is Her Majesty Revenue and Customs, where we discussed about where Her Majesty Revenue and Customs relate to Income Tax Department. Clear? Now, coming back to it, so step one is you would try to persuade the client and convince the client and tell him that please do not show this income half, incomplete. Add the income and show the complete income and pay the complete taxes to HMRs. Step 2. Client does not get convinced. Client still wants to hide the information, evade the taxes. Then it's your duty as a tax professional. You will no longer work for that client and you will resign. Step 3. You will inform HMRC that look, I've resigned from the services. But you know what? You are also bound by the principle of confidentiality, right? So you cannot reveal the reason for the same to HMRC. You cannot say that look, HMRC, they did tax evasion, so I'm resigning. No. You will just simply inform only one thing to HMRC that look, I'm resigning and I'm no longer going to be working for this client. That's all. Step 4 says now prepare a money laundering report for the money laundering activities that have been committed by the client and give it to the money laundering officer of your firm. So the ACCA firm that you are a member of, give that money laundering report to that ACCA firm that is your firm. Let's say if your firm does not have a money laundering officer or you are a sole proprietor, so then you can submit your report to Crime Investigation Authority of the country. Simple. Submit your report to that Crime Investigation Authority and your job is done. But remember one thing, you gave the report to Crime Investigation Authority. This information should not be shared with any third party or the client. Because if you do so, it's a criminal offense. You will be charged with criminal charges for tipping off and you will have heavy penalties and maybe you may need to serve imprisonment also. It's a severe criminal charge. So that tipping off should not take place. Got it? So when you find a client to do engaged in any tax evasion activity, these 4 steps you will be following. Number 1, persuade the client. Number 2, stop working for the client. Number 3, inform HMRC of the same without giving the reasons for the same. Number 4, money laundering report is to be submitted. That's all, and these steps are to be followed in the same sequence. Don't forget that. Got it? Now let's just do more. Let's go to the book and let's do more. Okay, now this is very interesting. It says that let's say you filed your return. Okay, this topic I'll just cover. For example, you filed your return and you're having a refund of 10,000. Wrongly by mistake or by the God's grace, by the kindness, HMRC transferred to you in your account 1 lakh. Though you're so happy to receive, you got 90,000 extra and that too from HMRC and you're trying to celebrate. Okay? Keep that celebration off because HMRC says, boss, if you keep my extra money, that is going to have penalties applicable. That means if you received extra repayment from HMRC, which is refund, then it's your duty as a taxpayer to return it back to HMRC. But what if we don't return it back? Then as a tax practitioner, it's your duty to tell the client that look, you have to refund the excess sum to HMRC, otherwise it will be a criminal offense and you would be subject to the criminal or even somewhere civil charges also. Okay, and then if the client still says no, I will not refund the money, then follow the same steps. Stop working for the client, inform HMRC, prepare a money laundering report. So this is also the steps will be connected when there is a refund issue also, and if there is an over repayment by HMRC and the return is not being made by the taxpayer. Okay, now I come to the points. Which is the second part of your topic. When you see the heading of the chapter, it's ethics and tax avoidance schemes. Ethics part we have covered along with a lot of other smaller topics. Okay, but now I'll cover tax avoidance schemes. So let me give you an example. See, many times you invest into the different pension schemes, you do donations also. Why? Because that is going to save taxes, that is going to give you an expense benefit, right? But let's say you invested into a scheme and that is a tax avoidance scheme. The purpose is to avoid taxes, right? And but the purpose with which these schemes are entered or they started is so that you can evade tax. For example, let's say that you know you have opened no you do investments in another country and that is a tax haven like Mauritius. Okay, so the purpose of doing investments over there is to get the tax benefit. Simple. Okay, so the purpose is nothing but only from tax advantage. That is, you just want to pass on the VAT, pass on the tax to a country where there are no taxes. So this is a wrong intention. It's more likely a tax evasion that is taking place. So these schemes are to be discouraged. Then simply it means that these schemes should be discouraged. Clear? So all those tax avoidance schemes that has a direct impact on direct taxes, they should be scrutinized in detail to see whether these are genuine schemes or these are malicious schemes. And in that case, then they would be discouraged. Okay, because now I'll take you that portion. Look here. Any person, okay, any person who fails to comply with the disclosure providing provisions relating to the direct tax avoidance scheme. Disclosures are right. You have to give the details of the scheme to HMRC, submit all the details, annual returns, annual information that you are submitting. That is also you are required to submit because HMRC would require for 5 years at least. Every year the full annual data should be submitted to HMRC. So let's see, if your failure to comply with these disclosure requirements, then there's going to be heavy liability levied, and that is going to be not exceeding £600 per day starting from the day of failure to disclose. £600 per day, not per month. Quite heavy. So this is, if you want to avoid it, then don't have any of these malicious tax avoidance schemes entered with, which have a purpose only to evade tax, right? So that schemes should not be basically made a part of. Okay, now let's go forward. Now, there's a very interesting point that says that, let's say if the tax avoidance schemes that we discuss are not direct tax avoidance schemes but are like the VAT avoidance schemes. Okay, so then in that case, the penalty will be like I said, up to 600 per day, but only in case of VAT it can even be increased to maximum 1 million overall. 1 million pounds penalty. You can just see the heavy penalties are which are there. Okay, now the next topic is serial tax avoidance. Serial tax avoidance is like, all of you got it, right? Serial tax avoidance simply means that, let's say you had a tax avoidance scheme. There's Mr. A who created a tax, who was a promoter for a tax avoidance scheme, like a chit fund companies, for example. These are those examples of tax avoidance schemes where where they attract the customers and tell that we are investing in various tax avoidance schemes and you would also get the tax benefit and you will not be liable to pay taxes. So the people, of course, get attracted and they invest in chit fund. Not every company is not genuine, but many companies, they turn out to be not genuine at all. Now, coming back here, serial tax avoiders or avoidance schemes means that, let's say you have direct tax avoidance schemes, like maybe two, more than one. Okay, that's like 2 3 schemes you have. Okay, now the entity has received the notice from HMRC that, let's say we gave this benefit to the taxpayer that if you invest in the scheme, 60% of the income that you earn will not be subject to taxes. But then HMRC reviewed it. Maybe the case went under review, and the HMRC I have now concluded. The HMRC have not concluded to the taxpayer that, look, we will not give you any 60% benefit. We will only give you 20% benefit. So you can see that the scheme benefit got reduced. The scheme benefit got reduced. So that means the scheme got defeated, right? Because the purpose of the scheme was to give 60% tax benefit, which is no longer there. Then one of the other examples can also be wherein the case went to court case was there and court quashed the case, or maybe the tax liabilities were not reduced, so due to which the avoidance schemes wherein which was supposedly to give benefits to the taxpayers, the tax amount has not been reduced as was promised by the promoter of the scheme. So then in that case also we say that the schemes are defeated. They've lost it, no, because the purpose with which they were created is no longer there. So these are known as defeated schemes. Generally, these taxpayers which were a part of these serial tax defending avoidance schemes, they are generally receiving a warning notice from HMRC, and for every 5 years that notice is valid for 5 years. Clear? Now for every 5 years, every year they have to submit their full information to HMRC. So remember serial tax avoidance scheme as what you are thinking of. Okay, just that it is serial tax avoidance scheme simply means that there has been um, there has been defeat of these schemes, and there are multiple schemes that have been entered, okay, and they have been largely defeated. So that means a lot of taxpayer money is at stake, right? Therefore we call it as serial tax avoidance schemes. Lastly, I will take up GAR. GAR is a small but very crucial topic. GAR is General Anti-Abuse Rules. So that simply means, let's say you have opened a company which means linked to another company, another company, another company. These companies are dormant. The aim is just to pass on the VAT, get the maximum exemption benefits so that we end up paying no VAT. You all remember Ketan Parekh case in our country, which it was all about opening these dormant companies, and multiple cases are there where these dormant companies were opened. So this is general anti-abuse rule says this is not correct, and hence it should be avoided. It should not be done because here we are trying to have significantly lower income or significantly higher expenses, right? So this is not allowed, and this is generally not acceptable. Hence, it should not be promoted also. So it simply means that the taxpayer should avoid being a part of these, the abusive tax arrangements, and the promoter should also not be promoting such schemes. Okay, that's yeah. One of the other guard points can be like when you're showing significant high amount of losses, and these are fictitious losses. This is just to evade tax. So then it's a general anti-abuse rules because then we are not following the normal rules and regulations, and we are not. Um, you can see that the purpose is very clear that you're trying to evade tax, right? So that should not be there. Clear? So what all we have covered here quickly, we have covered about the tax avoidance schemes, we have talked about the prospective clients, we have discussed about the preventive measures to be taken, the money laundering, tax avoidance, tax evasion that has taken place, the fundamental ethical principles that has to be followed and breaches to be avoided, safeguards to be in place, conflict of interest that can be there. So this is a summary of what all we have covered. Now I think it's good that we go to a question. So let's discuss question. First question that I'm taking is, I give an opportunity to answer, but first question I will be doing it. You have acted for Robinic for several years and also for the three directors and shareholders. Conflict of interest it looks like. Rob, Ben and Nick. Recently, Rob has had a disagreement with Ben and Nick over the direction of the company. Explain with that safeguards that you would have in place when you started to act for both the company and its director. What are the safeguards that you will have in place? Now, ideally, what should be your answer? Look at the question requirement again. Explain the safeguards that you would have put in place when you started to act for the client. Starting, there is no disagreement. Okay, now what we can write here? Let's discuss. Let's discuss answer one. Part A. Okay, what should we be writing? When the agreement was entered into. So at that time, Can just start from this point here, which says that explain the safeguards that would have put in place when you started to act for both the companies and the directors. So when um, acting as a tax accountant for both the company and the directors, consent from all the relevant parties um, must be obtained. Okay, consent from all the relevant parties must be obtained to continue to act for all of them. However, this is a typical 2 to 3 marks question. Okay, however, safeguards, because this question talks about safeguards like separate engagement teams, suggest more safeguards, separate engagement team, access rights control, etc. should be in place. That's done. Easy. Let's do the second one. So second part says recently outline the ethical issue that has now arisen and the actions that you should take. The ethical issue because of the disagreement that has arisen is that now the client cannot work for both of the all of the entities at the same time because there is a conflict of interest and hence there can be a breach of principle of objectivity. To ensure that the breach does not take place, the entity should obtain consent from all the parties and then based on the consent decide they will be continuing to act for the client, the company or the directors. Okay, this pointer we will write in this. So in total these two pointers will make the question equal to 5 marks. First part 3 marks, second part 2 marks. Clear? Let's go to the next one. Very interesting. Let's read it slowly and carefully. You have acted for Tristan but have discovered a serious tax irregularity which Tristan has refused to correct. You remember the point tax evasion when the client refuses to do 4 steps, same point is covered here. You have advised Tristan that you cannot any longer act for him. You receive a letter from other ACCA accountants advising you that you have been asked to act for Tristan, that they have been asked to act for Tristan. Tristan has forbidden you to divulge any information about him. Explain what actions you should take in response to the letter. So you would write down those 4 steps that we would try to persuade or convince the client to ensure that the tax irregularity is corrected and the return is corrected. If Tristan still continues to act in the same way and does not rise to correct the irregularities, then you would stop acting for the client. And third one, you would inform HMRC of your a resignation without giving the reasons for the same, that you are no longer acting for Tristan. Okay. Lastly, a money laundering report will be submitted and so on. You clear? So these are the actions that will be taken in response to the letter. Now, one more pointer that you have received a letter from ACCA accountants. Now, as per the ACCA Code of Ethics, the accountant can only reflect upon these the information of the client only in the case when it is allowed by, required by law, mandatory by law to disclose it, or when it is mandatory under any other laws and regulations, for example, in the search by ED, that you are required to disclose it. Or third one, if your client gives you permission to disclose that detail to other party. Here, none of that is holding true, as a client has refused, forbidden you to divulge any information about him. Then, bound by the principle of confidentiality, you will not share any information with the prospective, any information with the prospective accountants, with the prospective accountants. So even though they may resign, doesn't matter, but we are not going to share any information. Done? Clear. 3 marks you obtained. 2 marks. Explain what action the other ACC accountant should take, that they should approach you and should ask for. We will not write you. The new accountant, the prospective accountants will approach the ex accountant and would try to get the reasons. Basically, we can write there. So the other accountants will not act for the client, act for Tristan, because they're not getting information from the ex clients, ex accountants. Clear? Done? You got 5 and 5. Now let's go to the next one. Okay, I give you 2 minutes. Please read. Actually, this is a 5 marks, so ideally you will get 7 to 10 marks in the minutes in the exam. Okay, I give you 2 minutes. Please go through the reading, and then I will read it and I will solve it. Okay, you are a tax manager. Let's read it. You are a tax manager in a firm of accountants. You are preparing the tax return for Sonia, and amongst the papers, you find a bank statement for a new account resulting in interest of 2500 in the tax year. Sonia says that the interest should not be put on her tax return. You have advised her that it should be included on her tax return. Outline the actions that you would take if Sonia continues to refuse to allow you to put the interest on a tax return. I think we've already covered this, so I'm sure it is very easy for you. Like I told you, it is extracts and only tested for 5 marks. So the 4 steps that we discussed, that is what you're going to write here. Clear? And also explain about tax evasion, that why it is tax evasion. So great. I'm sure now you've got hold of this topic. Of course, in the next lecture, I'll give you a complete recap of this topic so that we have hold of this topic completely, and these 5 marks are completely easy for you to get. And now the thing is not over. Okay, these are some of the questions that you have to do in your homework, and you will write down these answers and send it to me for evaluation. I will go through the same and personally read your answers to see how well you're writing. It is only for 5 marks, so you don't have to really write big stories, but then you have to of course put the things in place and ensure that you're writing your answers in the paragraph. And 5 marks means 5 valid points should be covered in your answer. Simple. Okay. But I think for now, let's take a quick one question so that you have, a better understanding of this topic again. These are extracts taken from past paper questions. So they have been asked in the exam. Okay. I'm just taking one of the extract, and the other 3 extracts will be homework for you. Okay. Will be homework for you. Let's do one extract here. Your manager has had a meeting with Tilly, who is establishing a new business. An extract of an email from your manager is set out to in the exhibit below. You are required to prepare the memorandum. So I will also give you, I always will share the format, because in your ATX exam you'll be tested for the answering the writing the answers in the correct format also. That is very essential. I will share all the tips with you, all the formats with you also. As requested by the manager, Exhibit is extract of email from your manager is given to you. We have been asked to advise Tilly on a new business which involves producing gardening accessories which she hopes to sell to local retailers. Prepare a memorandum for Tilly's client file addressing the following issue. Now, what is the issue? Tilly is hoping to obtain contracts with a number of local retailers and have asked us whether we can help her do this. Okay, so we are providing her information, and we currently act for one of the retailers and have acted in the past also for a number of retailers. Stop. So that means here it is more about principle of confidentiality, correct? Therefore, we have existing knowledge and experience in this retail sector. It carries 5 marks. Let's discuss. But first, let me show you the format that you should be following. So here in the notes, you will get these formats details also. Look here. These are some of the formats that I've attached. That when you're writing the notes for the meeting, when you're writing memorandum, what are the formats that you should be considering? So like in our question, we are required to write memorandum. So our format answer should begin as follows. We should write our address, your address, or even if you don't do anything, you can just write as a heading, our address, your address. That will also do. And then you would practically start with date, subject, and to whom you are answering. Dear client, for example. Then you will write this line, thank you for the email. I shall reply to the queries put up to you to my firm one by one. And then you will write heading and you will start answering. So we have a heading here. Let's look at the question requirement. The heading here is advice on uh, advice on giving advice to Tilly, right? Giving advice to Tilly. Now, how you should be answering this question? We would start, right answer is in the paragraph. First paragraph, we can write that as per the ACCA Code of Ethics, the tax professionals are bound by the principle of confidentiality and hence they are required to not share any information for the clients, even ex clients when they are ex accountants, up to 5 years from the date of cessation of the duties. They can only disclose information relating to which are covered by the principle of confidentiality only in the case when it is required by law and is mandatorily required by law, or it is mandatorily required as per the rules and regulations given in the different laws which the entity has to comply with, or they are required to disclose information when as a professional duty of theirs that they have to disclose this information, like quality audits and all that we discussed, right? You will write these pointers. So apart from these pointers, as per the principle of confidentiality, the um, uh, you are not expected to share any client information with Tilly, right? Any client information, any other client data, because you're bound by principle of confidentiality. However, like it is mentioned, as an accountant, we can use existing knowledge and experience in this retail sector and apply it to the client. That would not be termed as a breach. Okay, so the experience and the knowledge that has been obtained can be shared, or can be not shared but can be used when we are advising Tilly on a business without divulging into any information for any third party or any other entity. Done. So easy. 5 marks, 1 marks, 2 marks you've got for this final paragraph and 3 marks for the initial paragraph. Done. For the writing your answer in the format, you will get skills marks. Clear, everybody? Are you now able to understand how we formulate the answer here? So even for 5 marks, we have to make sure that we grab these 515. Now all of you have to cover these 4 questions which are remaining. Send them to me on the WhatsApp and I will personally evaluate them, give you feedback so that the next set of questions that you are going to get, you will have absolutely no trouble. Give yourself 2 minutes now and tell me if you have any questions or queries in the class. I'll take. And even if you ask me queries in the upcoming classes also that we are going to have, that's absolutely okay. You can ask me queries on WhatsApp also, completely okay, and I'll take care of it. Though generally I recommend that if you can ask your query in the class, it is cleared then and there and I explain you live, right? So it's much more convenient. But then WhatsApp support is also there. You can ask me queries there also. Ask me if you have any queries in this chapter 1, which is ethics and tax avoidance schemes. All clear? Very good. Thank you for telling me that it's completely crystal clear. That's what I want. 100% crystal clarity with all students. Okay, so now let's do one thing. Now let's stop here, revise through everything, concepts and questions. Please practice. And if you have any questions, come back to me. See you in the next class.